Hello and welcome to Bottom Shelf Gaming. Today I'm going to be reviewing a game that's been out for about 2.5 months now, so I'm a little late to the punch, but I figure if I'm going to start reviewing games, it would be best to start with some that have been out for a little while, or some of my favorites. You can get a baseline for what my review system is going to be like, what my scoring is going to mean when you compare games that are just coming out that I'm going to be tackling to some that have been more established over the weeks, months, years. So yeah, let's just jump right into it, and we'll start with the graphics. I gotta say, this might be the most picturesquely beautiful game world that I've ever seen. The only others that can maybe compete are like The Witcher or Uncharted 4. The color palette in Ghost of Tsushima is absurdly gorgeous, and I found myself actually using a video game photo mode here, which I usually don't do very often, especially because of all these great little touches that they add in the photo mode, like adding particle effects to spice up the images. It definitely helps that the locales have a ton to offer. There's a ton of variation here, from the flowing rivers of long grass that Jin reaches down to skim as you ride your trusty steed across the island, to the vistas of mountain shrines that are often peppered with trees of such reds, oranges, and greens, the likes of which you've never seen. In fact, good luck finishing this game with how much time you're going to be spending stopping and just staring at it. Whenever you climb to one of the top of the shrines and just look out over the area, I bet you're not going to get through this game without opening that photo mode, turning on the full red leaf effect, and just sitting there listening to the music and looking at the beautiful scenery for a while. It doesn't even stop with the environment either. In battles, you're going to roll through mud and blood and everything in between, hacking Mongols to shreds. The gore's over the top. It's beautifully satisfying. It sprays out in arterial gouts and clings to your blade until you flick it away with a final flourish. The armor looks natural and real, and as you upgrade it, it really becomes something so much better than what you started with. The plates look handcrafted. Every piece of the armor looks like it was sculpted. It's some of the best armor I've ever seen in gaming in general, and it exists right here in this game. The only fault I can give to graphics is on some of the facial animations and the tweaks on the characters. Most of the main guys look pretty good, but there are some falters here and there that keep it from looking like the best the industry has to offer. And for that, this is going to score about an 18 out of 20. Next up, we got sound.
Girls, boys, chickens. I have it all. For the right price, call them whatever you like.
Time to end this.
And this is where the game really shines. I'd say the voice and the music are absolutely perfect and really can't be beat. The music is authentic, it fits, it swells just at the right moments sometimes. The music when you're not in battle is really beautiful, it's relaxing and calming, it really lends well to the exploration. And then you're forced into battle and you're chopping off Mongol heads to the beat of the Mongol drums, making them vomit up their insides. There's a clang of swords and elusive arrows, and it hits your ears just as hard as those arrows do hit Jin. Perfect parries are incredibly satisfying to pull off. It hits you with like just the right amount of hype and a slow-mo effect. The sound effects when you're walking around and just tossing kunai and sticking your swords in Mongol bellies, they're truly deserving of an award. You know how some games have that like satisfying chunkiness to their sound, like when you're walking around? God of War is a great example of this, where the sound design is just perfectly suited to the exploration. That's this game. It does it 100% perfectly. Great as well at their job is the excellent voice cast, including Daisuke Tsuji, Francois Chow, who you might recognize from Lost, and James Liao, who is Kenji. He plays a minor character in Barry, and he's in the 4th season of Prison Break as well. And there's some other great voice actors here as well, as Eric Steinberg, Patrick Gallagher as Koten Khan. All these guys do a great job. A lot of them also do the facial capture for the characters as well, and they deliver their lines perfectly. There's not a ton that I can say as far as the negative to the sound or the voice here, other than I just hope these guys got paid, and paid pretty well. I mean, not only is this one of the best looking games of all time, it's definitely one of the best sounding ones. And that's why I gotta give it a 20 out of 20, because I can't really think of any nitpicks here. It didn't glitch on me at any point. It didn't mess up. It was just solid. So it's gotta get the full points.
Thank you for your help.
Moving on to gameplay. And this is the tough category because there's so much to like in the gameplay of this game, but I also found it extremely inconsistent, and if I'm being completely honest, I didn't start to enjoy this game until probably late in Act 1. There were bits of it that I definitely did enjoy, but there were a lot of it that I found to be an acquired taste, especially how it kind of doles out the stances that you need to play the game effectively, which isn't exactly common. Because some of these enemies are just wrecking your shit in the beginning. I guess it works in a gameplay sense because it's encouraging you to play it stealthily, which is how Jin seems to be building. It seems like he's kind of out of practice. He hasn't been in any big battles really yet, other than the one that kicks off at the beginning of the game. So it would make sense that he's not able to just take on 20 guys at once right in the beginning. So I guess I can't really fault it for those issues, but it does make the beginning hours a bit of a slog until you get all of those stances and you're able to play more effectively. Yeah, as much as it makes sense, it does prove quite unfun and frustrating for someone hoping to master the gameplay through training or trial and error. I kind of really don't like those in-game built-in walls to stop you from advancing to your full potential, even if they make sense. The camera is another huge issue that was so much worse than I had expected it to be. The camera likes to get stuck behind things like blades of grass or bushes, or stuck behind trees, or even behind a guy or a horse when you're in your standoffs. So good luck timing your button presses when you can't see jack shit. Yeah, at the start of a fight, the player has the option to duel, which lets you take out multiple enemies before the fighting truly starts. It requires some truly precise timing, especially late in the game. These bits are gripping, they're difficult, but they're ruined so often by the camera obscuring the enemies, or a horse that steps into the frame. And if this happens, then I just get ready to lose a lot of health and put the dream of a perfect fight behind you. Equally frustrating is having to control the camera out of a bush as you're fighting off multiple enemies at once, and this happens a lot. I can't exaggerate it enough. This really does happen all the time, and it is a huge issue. The first act, also in particular, forces you into fights in a lot of cramped small spaces, like inside some ramshackle shacks and houses and whatever, and that really doesn't do this issue any favors. This kind of is a tale of three different games, because once I got into the second act, I started feeling and experiencing the samurai power fantasy in full force. I simply felt like I couldn't be killed as I wiped out encounter after encounter filled with enemies, like 20 people at a time sometimes, and you're just mowing through these guys. The only struggles were learning how to fight against the quick and nimble Ronin types and the, at times, unpredictable shield enemies. Sometimes they'll start with an attack that is parryable, and sometimes they'll start with their shield attack, which never becomes parryable, no matter how many things you have. And these attacks are pretty quick, so you have to respond on the fly. That's not really a problem, though. I think at that point, you need at least one enemy that's going to give you some kind of challenge, because I was cleaning up. The game also seemed to learn from the subtleties of the first act. It forced you into tight spots way less. I somewhat forgot about the camera and was able to fully engage with the pretty wonderful combat system. I was really enjoying it in this part of the game. The system, it employs different stances that work on different enemy types. It couples those with some very satisfying to pull off parries, and perfect parries for if you can get the timing just right, and a finicky dodge that works on those moves you simply can't parry. It all works surprisingly well with some practice, aside from some notable hiccups. Let's talk about R2. R2 is the button you're going to use to... You hold it to switch your stance, but it's also the button for just about everything else in the game. It's picking things up, talking to people, reviving allies, getting on your horse. I could go on. So there's many a times where you need to get into a specific stance to take on a specific enemy, like circle... The R2 circle stance is good against shields. The R2 X stance is better for swordsman enemies. So when you're trying to switch because you have an enemy coming in that you need to be in a specific stance for, you'll try and hold R2 and just pick up supplies off the floor instead of whatever you were trying to do. Beautiful. This is exactly what I wanted. This could have been easily remedied by having you not able to pick up things like supplies off dead bodies until a fight is over. Because I can't count the amount of times where I'm jiving in a fight, about to maybe get a perfect battle, which I was always trying to get, and I'll just pick something up instead of switching stance and then get fucked by the first enemy who comes in. There's also no lock-on, which feels like a bit of a miss, because there's a soft lock that kind of fails a lot. You'll be aiming your left stick right towards an enemy, and Jin will just decide to attack the guy on the opposite fucking side of him. And I don't know why. He'll just simply miss, attacking just to the side of the Mongol that you're trying to target. Sometimes he'll even turn around and hit someone else who is clearly not your focus. I mean, these frustrations are easy to overlook, but they do occur commonly enough to really leave a bad taste at times, especially in the final act. And this is where the third part of the game comes in. Act 1, enjoyed some of it, but was having trouble. Act 2, loved it. Was really enjoying it. It was still challenging, but I just felt like I could handle it. And then we come into Act 3, and every enemy gets quite beefy. That power fantasy from Act 2 is a thing of the past. Without game mode on your TV, which I've heard makes this issue a lot better, some of the standoffs are nearing impossibility. The amount of time that you have to parry is so small, so you'll take a big chunk of damage because you don't have a certain setting on your TV. I mean, it's a couple of frames. I think someone analyzed it, and it's about 4 frames in between the start of their attack and the end of the attack. Add that with the fact that they can bait you with fake attacks, with feints, and it just starts feeling unfair and inconsistent. Some of the enemies as well, like the spear enemies in the late game, have an attack that is a sweep with no tell whatsoever, and it just makes you feel like you can never even get close to the spear enemies because they'll attack you without warning, without you being able to do anything. I don't think I ever landed a parry on this move, even though it is doable. I don't think I've ever done it, just because the timing is so small. I mean, even after upwards of 40 hours of gameplay for me, I was still having trouble with these certain enemies. It's kind of like the game is encouraging you back into stealth to help your odds, just like in Act 1, but you still have all that power and all those moves, so you feel bad going back into the stealthy Act 1 version of yourself. Anyways, that's the combat. Let's get into the side activities. And I have to say I'm a little biased here because I'm very sick of the Ubisoft method of gaming. And this does have some of those seemingly never-ending checklist style of side quest. They grant a lot of activities. There's not a ton of meat behind them. There certainly is quantity, though. I'll give you that. I'm not going to dock points for these because a lot of people are going to be fine with having a lot of things to do, but for me, these are kind of artificial game lengtheners that will likely stop me from 100% completing this game, as I usually want to do. Aside from the collection activities, though, which is what I was talking about there are some really nice stories in the more meaty tales section of the side activities and quests. These are going to range from helping save the denizens of Tsushima from bandits, to helping a retired sensei hunt down his final student who has defected to the Mongols, and I gotta say, this is where the quality lies. About 50% of these have predictable or very similar endings, but the exceptions really surprised me overall, and I wouldn't cut any of them from the game. I think they're really good additions. Yeah, just really well done. I'd say the combat and controls, I'm going to give a 15 out of 20 because there was a lot to enjoy there. It's just, I have so many little nitpicks with what's going on. And then the activities and the side missions, I'll give a 14 out of 20. Now we get into the meat of things, near the end of the review with the story. And I gotta say, I really like this story. I know this is where I'm supposed to make a big stink about how Jin isn't like the most relatable or fun guy, but it kind of feels accurate, doesn't it? I mean, this is a man raised in a time of constant war. He's trained to keep his emotions in check and his honor intact. I don't think it would be very fitting of him to drop wisecracks after slaying an entire village of Mongols. In fact, I liked it more because I began to understand that Jin doesn't even enjoy the fighting. He kind of begins the game as an inexperienced fighter that chooses to do what he has to do to rid Tsushima of the Mongols and become the Ghost. He does make some wild and, some would say, out-of-character decisions throughout the game, but I think it makes sense why he does these things. He's duty-bound to the people of Tsushima and his home, and he's making the ultimate sacrifice of his honor, his standing, his home, his happiness for everyone else. I think it builds at the right pace, it doesn't overstay its welcome, and it culminates in a surprisingly tragic and well-executed final fight that is only hampered by forcing a choice onto the player in the final moments. I thought this was kind of a strange choice. I'm generally not a fan of a non-choice driven game forcing a choice on the player, because I didn't make the choices that led Jin to this moment. He made those choices. I probably would have done something different, and that felt strange. It was like I was a puppeteer at the end of the game, choosing an option that Jin likely would not have chosen because of my wimpy sentimental heart. I mean, outside of the main story, as I've said, about half the side missions are written exceedingly well. The four main threads outside the story are Yuna, Lady Sakura, Norio, and Ishikawa. They're all very good, despite some seriously questionable writing at the end of Norio's storyline. I thought his was strange. This game isn't afraid to make its characters unlikable, yet necessary, which strikes an exciting balance of trust and mistrust as you're thrust into battle together and have to trust people that you don't necessarily like anymore after you did their last side mission. The villain works. He's given some time to shine throughout. He's pretty fucking evil. He's pretty evil overall. He shows up and kills your friends, and basically he's just kind of a giant dick and fights with zero honor whatsoever. He's a great dichotomy to Jin and some of the more honor-driven, heroic characters. Now, I have to say, it does tackle some well-tread territory, but these days, what isn't tackling well-tread territory? And it is trying to be somewhat historical, so it's even harder to try something a little on the newer side, but it does this well. It tackles this well-tread territory exceedingly well, and I just think it handles itself fantastically. So I'd give the story as a whole 15 out of 20. So all that comes together to make a very, very playable game. Not just a playable game, a beautiful, exciting, and very, very fun game. I know my score is kind of be on the lower end here of probably everyone else. I've seen a lot of 9s and 9.5s out of 10, but there's enough in here that made me at times not like the game as much as I could have. And there were enough bugs and some gameplay tweaks that could have been made that could have made this much closer to those scores, those 9s and 9.5s. I mean, if I'm being honest, I absolutely love this game. I adored it. I want to see more of this type of game and this type of combat system. I just think I would be remiss to give it anything over an 82 out of 100, which is my cumulative score of all my other scores. But with the stipulation that this game is amazing, and I would recommend it to everybody that I know who plays games. And I hope you play it, and I hope you respond to my video and let me know what I did wrong, what I did right. If I'm wrong about any of these gameplay complaints or story complaints or whatever, any of my complaints, or whether you think I'm right, it'd be great to hear from you. As always, guys, I can't really say that because this is my first review video, but I appreciate all the same stuff that all those other YouTubers appreciate. I just don't want to say it, so, you know. Help a new channel out. Happy COVID. And game on.